Good morning. You listen to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning, my guest is Jamie McCurry, the Chief Administrative Officer with the Georgia Port Authority. Jamie, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you, Kemp.
It's good to talk to you. A little background on you. I noticed that for a young person, you've done really well. You were listed in Georgia Trend magazine as one of the 40 under 40 just a few years ago, so congratulations on that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
The reason I wanted to talk to you, obviously, international trade, specifically out of China, is in the news in the flooring business right now with the current 10% tariff and the threat of it going to 25% January 1st. It's probably going to impact this business in a big way. I thought I'd just ask you, the Georgia Port Authority has been spending a lot of money in infrastructure. You've deepened the channels and you're able now to take bigger container ships. I guess these ports across the country compete with one another, and you now are a very viable port for products coming in from Asia versus them having to go to, say, Long Beach and trained over the country, right?
That's correct. We're fortunate that we've had quite a long-standing relationship in terms of trade with Asia. Mm-hmm. Savanah has long been the dominant southeastern port in terms of import-exports with Asia, and that has only grown as that part of the world has become a larger trading partner for the United States. That has been very much to Savannah's advantage. Savanah is the load center port, if you will, for the Southeast. And a great deal of that is Asian trade, whether it be through the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal, reaching into what would typically be a region east of the Mississippi. And so rather than see trade go strictly through Southern California to then be trucked or railed to areas that maybe, quite frankly, as close to Savannah as Atlanta, there has over the past decade been a shift where a majority of that trade now does go through Savannah.
The two big questions to ask, I guess, is how much has been spent on this infrastructure to get it to where it is today? And then what is the economic impact of the port to the Georgia economy?
Our capital investment program over the last decade has been in excess of $1 billion, and that includes our work with the Corps of Engineers on our harbors. But we've got over $2 billion capital expenditure program planned for the next decade. That will be the continuation of the harbor deepening project, as well as our ongoing landside improvements here. So we have a rather robust ongoing CapEx program.
So $1 billion so far in the last 10 years, and $2 billion more in the planning. And then what is the economic impact of the freight that comes in there, both in Savannah and Brunswick?
I think that the one number that most people care the most about it is really the reason that we exist, and that's job creation. In the most recent economic impact study that we conducted with the University of Georgia, 439,000 full and part-time jobs in Georgia alone are related to port activity.
Do you have a number for the value of the goods that comes through your ports?
In Georgia alone, there's $106 billion in sales associated with port activities and $44 billion in state GDP. So that there's a profound financial impact throughout the state from port operations. That does include Savannah and Brunswick, as well as our inland ports. But it's a tremendous amount. When you say $44 billion in state GDP, that's 8% of Georgia's total GDP.
I was nosing around this morning prior to this interview and saw an article that was estimated that the value of the Chinese good that were brought into the Georgia ports was $23 billion in 2017. Does that sound about right?
It does sound about right.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong.
It is strong. It is strong. So what strategic planning are you doing in light of these tariffs, if any?
Well, I wouldn't say have strategic planning in light of the tariffs. We're continuing to invest in our program. We're continuing to operate in a way that makes Savannah the most appealing container port to operate for our steamship line customers, and doing the same thing in Brunswick with our break bulk and roll-on, roll-off customers. So while trade negotiations are done at a totally different level, we're going to be prepared to handle what trade demands come our way. And we're not going to, hold back on our program of investment because, trade has shifted historically and will likely shift going forward. I don't think that we'll stop seeing Asian trade be a primary part of our operations. Trade with Asia, like I said, is by far our largest trading partner, and China is the single largest country in Asia as far as trading partners for Georgia's ports. We don't see that changing.
Yeah. So I know the New Year's is coming around in February already, so I mean that automatically brings a little bit of a surge. But have you seen a little bit more of a surge in the recent month or so based on the threat of a 25% tariff on these consumer goods?
You know, Kemp, it's hard to say what surge has been over the past few months to get ahead of tariffs, or maybe continuing now. We have seen record year-over-year growth on a monthly basis for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It has been stronger this year than ever before. We are in peak season right now. Last October of 2017 was by a good margin our busiest month ever for container trade through Savanah. This month we have another record beyond last October. I think we'll be very, very pleased with that performance. That may not be a certainty at this point. It's a little early in the month, and of course we have weather to deal with right now. But trade has been good.
All right, so you have a rail line now that's been finished, and it's called the Appalachian Regional Port that runs from Savanah up to Chatsworth, which is right next to Dalton, Georgia. So tell us just real quickly about that, if you would.
Sure, that's definitely an example of strategic infrastructure investment of ours. The facility is a Georgia Port Authority owned and operated facility. It is served by the CSX Railroad, and it really, we feel like, is going to be a great kind of load center of its own in the northwestern part of Georgia, not just pulling cargo from eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, northeastern Alabama, but also giving cargo that might be coming and going from the North Metro area and, of course, up into northwest Georgia, rather than having that have to travel through Atlanta to get to Savanah. You've got a platform there just outside of Chatsworth where it can serve as an import-export entry to the Garden City Container Terminal, but well away from Savanah. We're estimating that it'll save approximately 700 truck miles per container, because those trucks will not have to go not only to Savanah, but back to that region. So that's important for us. And when you look at the fact that Savanah is the largest port for the import of flooring materials, based on reports that we see, the country moved about 1.4 million metric tons over our last fiscal year. That would run July through June. And Savanah handled 43% of those imports. So with the assumption that a large portion of those are going to that portion of Georgia, we expect to see the Appalachian Regional Port be a very important player for that industry.
Now, there's no way, I know there's this HTS, and there's probably all kinds of flooring products that fall in these harmonized tariff schedules, but there's no way for you to tell me what percentage of your freight volume is flooring related, is there?
No, I would have to be making a guesstimate, and I don't think that I would be able to do that and capture the full scope of it. I mean, if strictly looking at a TEU count, the flooring segment that I just mentioned, with 43,000 20-foot equivalent units last fiscal year, that would be about 1% of our total volume.
Okay, Jamie, it's good to talk to you, and thanks for the update. We may check with you next year, depending on what happens with the Trump administration and what they decide to do. Again, been talking to Jamie McCurry, the Chief Administrative Officer with the Georgia Port Authority, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.